I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting on a Wednesday night, October 15th at 6 p.m. and we will all stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we always start with public audience. Before we do, I just wanted to make a comment and kind of apologize for what happened at last month's meeting where my timer went off and I thought it was the 5-minute timer, but it was the timer from the person before. So it was really probably 4 minutes or 3 minutes. And I interrupted the woman who was speaking because I thought she's gone over and there's been questions from people when anybody goes over. So I didn't wanna break our rules of, our priorities. So I did reach out to Elvira and sent her an apology email and said if she'd like to share her comments, her written comments, so that we could all see them in full without the cutoff of my cell phone. Steve was smart enough to turn his off because he knew it was from the last one, but I did not recognize that. And I actually thought I gave her extra time, so just wanna apologize, I wouldn't have done that had I not known that. With that, for public audience, I just got a sheet, usually we ask people to sign in, but you don't always have to, but the person who signs in gets to go first. So I have Susan Van Cleef. You do have 5 minutes, we try to be fair, so please try to keep your comments to that. So I'm gonna set my timer.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. So hello, my name is Susan Van Cleef, 6 Mallard Circle. It's nice to see you. Second night in a row, I've spent some time with some of you. I'm here to express support for the plan the Sustainability Committee is presenting tonight. I was appointed a member of the Clean Energy Task Force, the precursor of the Sustainability Committee, when the Clean Energy Task Force was created in 2008. And I was on that task force until 2019, when I stepped down because life was too busy. I do still hang out with the Sustainability Committee, but I'm not on the committee. Tonight, you're gonna hear part 1 of the Sustainability Plan, which focuses on energy. There are multiple reasons for Simsbury to focus on energy, but a reminder, the Clean Energy Task Force was created to guide Simsbury in planning for a future where the effects of climate change would come to our small New England town. In the last many years since we were created, about 17, we've witnessed those effects. But I feel Simsbury has fallen behind in the planning that we need to do, and the future seems to be here now. Transitioning to renewable energy along with pursuing energy efficiency means reducing carbon dioxide emissions to mitigate the effects of climate change. Both renewables and energy efficiency measures also add resilience to the electric grid during extreme weather events, lower the amount of respiratory illness causing particles in the air, and lower energy costs. So there are many benefits to be gained from the plan that you're gonna hear tonight. I hope all of you will consider the recommendations in the plan very seriously. The Sustainability Committee does need support from the town staff and the Board of Selectmen to move forward with the plan. Some, if not all of you, will be re-elected on November 4th, and I really hope that when you set your goals for 2025 to 2027, you'll consider adding goals to address the town's role in mitigating climate change. In 2023 to 2025, there was only install more EV chargers. So I know there's a lot of things that we've done for sustainability, either you or different organizations in town, like removing invasive plants, promoting dark skies, pollinator plantings. Those are all part of adapting to climate change, but it would really be wonderful to have Simsbury have an important role in mitigating the effects of climate change. And I do know that the day-to-day issues for all of you just seem to rise up to the top a lot, and thinking and planning ahead is difficult, particularly because the budget process is so time-consuming and addressing the mill rate always seems to be a priority. But there are many anecdotes of towns that have lowered their energy costs with renewable energy and efficiency projects. So I think actually some of those goals in terms of keeping the mill rate low and actually addressing climate change actually go hand in hand. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Other people here, Joan? Let me make sure I stop that one.
Joan Cove, 26 Whitcourt Drive. Recently, there was a first selectman candidate forum chaired by the Simsbury Chamber of Commerce. First Selectman Wendy McStusis sat 6 years on the Board of Selectmen and 4 years as First Selectman. After receiving the list of questions, had to read from her prepared notes and was not comfortable to explain to the public what she did for the 4 years she was First Selectman. Wendy McStusis has shown throughout the years in her position as First Selectman that she is a control freak, insecure when conducting the meetings, and unable to speak extemporaneously. Democrat First Selectman Wendy McStusis has had the Democratic members of the Board of Selectmen meet in a caucus prior to meetings to control the dialogue of the agenda items. Residents should be aware that some members of the prior Board of Selectmen did not run for re-election due to the failed leadership of First Selectman Wendy McStusis. First Selectman Wendy McStusis has tried to control public audience with a stopwatch, controlling the time of each person and hitting the gavel while interrupting the speech after 5 minutes without prior notice. The adoption of the rules of procedure is unconstitutional as stated by the ACLU, and its limit people's amendment to first free speech. At the September 24th Board of Selectmen meeting, First Selectman Wendy McStusis admonished me for saying her name incorrectly, as it was another unacceptable annoyance she could not tolerate. As a result of her concern, I have decided to give her a nickname, Wendy McStupid, which is easily to pronounce.
Excuse me, Joan, there is a decorum standard here.
From public audience. The Board of
Joan,
Selectmen at the
there is a
August 11,
decorum standard
2025
here.
meeting adopted a proclamation
do?
proclaiming September as Suicide
I'd
Prevention
like to,
Month.
do I call the PD to come up? That was a decorum standard that you violated and have done it on end. And to do that in front of the dais with all these people here is insulting.
Sorry.
So can you please stop?
Yes, a grieving mother
And-
hearing about the proclamation on suicide prevention came before the Board of Selectmen at the September 22,
Did we send the
2025
PD to
meeting
come
to
up?
share her issues resulting
I don't
in
have
a
my
child's
gavel.
suicide. First Selectman
Do I ask
Wendy
for a recess
McStusis
here?
stated that the mother had had 5
we have
minutes
a
to
motion to
discuss her
recess?
concerns about suicide prevention and
I'll make a
institutional
motion to
failure.
recess.
The mother asserted that the lack of support services when her child went to college led to her suicide.
All those in favor say aye.
The mother gave
We're
the
gonna
county
take a
the lack of
5-minute
support
recess.
services from the Board of Education during her
Audience.
Yeah, Susan.
Oh,
You should call
okay.
us back
Oh,
in.
he was here.
We
You
have
wanna
to-
go
we have to
first?
go back in.
Oh, can I make a motion to undo the recess?
Call us back to
Go back to the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, I haven't had to do that in the middle of public audience before. And can you state your name and address?
Michael Zemmel, 15 Pilfreshire Lane. Let me know when I should start.
Oh, so let me get the timer going. Sorry, it's a
like,
little
I
thrown
don't
off.
want to run out of time.
Okay,
Okay, it's a tough one to follow up, but dear Selectman Veal, I'm disappointed in how the dialogue around the Meadowood development has gone. I believe that you have misrepresented the proceedings of the board to your constituency, largely fabricating a controversy out of a non-issue. The way that you presented your colleagues' words could easily lead voters who have not spent hours going through the BOS recordings, minutes, and documents to untangle everything like I have into thinking that you have accomplished something substantial regarding Meadowood conservation, while the Democrats have plotted to build housing on it against the will of the people. On September 25th, the day after a BOS meeting, you made a post on Facebook. When I first read it, I thought, like many other people, wow, this guy has stood up for something admirable. I clearly have not been paying enough attention to the Democrats. You wrote, "The board overturned its error last night. Now we can finally protect Meadowood for generations to come. This motion to adopt recommendation 2B of the Schwach report, which would have developed affordable housing on 23 acres of land of Meadowood. When the vote was called, the motion which favored building on Meadowood unfortunately passed overwhelmingly, with only me and my colleague Heather Getz in opposition." Let me give some quick history for those who may be unfamiliar. Wendy's on the CROG Regional Planning Commission, along with leaders of 37 other towns. The commission started working with the consultancy on 830G housing development and created a pilot program where 3 towns could apply for, and if selected, receive a free study. The results of this study were non-binding, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. This is the best as I can reconstruct it. Non-binding and could be useful to guide or reject any further discussion on housing development. In February of this year, the Simsbury Committee, Schwach, presented its year-long report recommending 9 strategies to improve housing access in town. Recommendation 2 reads as follows: investigate whether there are town-owned properties that can support the development of housing with an affordable component, making such land available and/or purchasing land for this purpose. Issue RFP for developers. That's it. Investigate. It means Meadowood as a possibility, or it mentions Meadowood as a possibility, along with 2 other town-owned properties, both of which had dependencies on the CT legislature that was no longer in session. Wendy applied for the CROG's pilot's free and non-committal consultancy work, identifying the 24 out of 288 acres of Meadowood, which, to the knowledge of everyone involved at the time, including the POCD, had been set aside for future development by the town as part of the 2021 referendum. Originally, it was set aside as an athletic field, but later changed to, quote, highest and best use, either by or at a 2021 Board of Finance meeting. On June 16th of this year, the Board of Selectmen met to discuss Schwach Recommendation 2. Stephen introduced a motion to adopt it. There was a lengthy discussion, including confusion from Diana, Heather, and Curtis, as to what adopting the recommendation would oblige. The answer was made clear: nothing. It would help our chances of the CROG committee selecting Simsbury for its pilot program, and free consultancy, i.e. zero financial impact for the town. What we did with the findings would be for us to decide. Heather herself said she likes knowing all of our options. Selectman Beal, the only input you gave in the 30-minute discussion was twice asking Stephen to repeat the motion, and then at the very end quickly asking to remove the clause and or purchasing land for the purpose, which, might I add, is not relevant for Meadowood because the town already owns it. It was clear from the discussion that passing the motion served to reduce pressure from the state. Even Stephen, who proposed the motion, said he did not want houses built on Meadowood. I have timestamps and links for all these claims, by the way, which I can make available. In late June or early July, it was brought to, I believe, Wendy's attention that the original 2021 referendum actually didn't mention the 24 acres, therefore it was never actually up to the town to decide its highest and best use, so the entire issue was rendered moot. This was news to everyone. Wendy publicly announced this, the CROG application was withdrawn, and the issue was dropped. Then, at the September Board of Selectmen meeting, you introduced a motion to rescind the June vote because A, it's no longer appropriate to have on record due to the clarification and subsequent withdrawal, and B, it would help set the tone for the next elected board members come November. People thought it was a bit strange, but said fine, and it quickly passed. Then you went on Facebook the next day and talked about how your role in saving Meadowood from development. And then yesterday, on October 4th, you clarified the timeline on Facebook. You said that Wendy acted on her own, offering essentially up to the state a property that had been protected, failing to mention that it was an application for a free study, so we don't have to pay for it, and that is non-binding. And you said withdrawing Meadowood's CROG application was a violation of Robert's rules, as one member cannot undo the will of the board, failing to mention it was withdrawn because it was never viable in the first place. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here for public audience? Oh, Susan.
Good evening, Susan Messino, 41 Madison Lane. As you know, I'm on the Open Space Committee or Commission. I'm not here on behalf of that. Related to the previous comments, I wanna say that one thing we were talking about on open space is making sure that if we did have 24 acres that were available for whatever on Meadowwood, that it wasn't the most environmentally sensitive and agriculturally valuable acres of Meadowwood, and that is still an important discussion to have. So that's one issue. The other issue that I think is important related tonight that Susan Van Cleve mentioned is energy efficiency. You may know that there is a dark skies ordinance that will be at the zoning committee or commission on Monday night, related to the things that I've mentioned at every meeting. Where's that ordinance? It's not online. No one can find the ordinance. We did a public notice about it. There is no information about the ordinance, and it's Monday. I mean, how many times do I have to come here and say, tell the truth, follow the rules, the basic rules for public notice, etc. As another issue related to that, you were all here when we talked about the Curtis Park issue last time. And the Curtis Park issue that we discussed was that you signed an MOU for exclusive use for the private Simsbury Soccer Club for Curtis Park. And you said it needs to come back to you if there's gonna be any development, turf fields, selling and moving out of precious farmland soil, paving hundreds of parking spaces of impervious parking, putting in a snack shack, a playground, and trails, etc. And I made the point that there was no actual public hearing or RFP for which we gave away our public park via this MOU for exclusive use for a private club. That's a separate issue. After you voted to give away the private park, to a public club, through an exclusive use agreement, which you explicitly said you have to come back to us for any improvements, which means the development that I just mentioned, like a restaurant, parking, playground, turf field, etc. There is a press release that says improvements like paving, a restaurant, parking, blah, 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 have been approved by the BOS. So I'm just letting you know, like, what do I do as a person? Like, this just keeps on going. Maybe I need to create a document with timestamps and details and etc. like this gentleman just mentioned about the Meadowwood thing. And two more points tonight. As far as the sustainability issue, I've mentioned previously that all I really care about is our land and our water and our kids. And that's it. I don't get any money from it. I am a tenured professor. I get paid almost if I do nothing. Like, I can teach, I can publish little papers, whatever. I've earned that through years and years of education and work. The idea that we should take our town land for housing or renewable energy or all this other private-public partnerships, which means putting public stuff into private pockets, is not low-hanging fruit. It's a dangerous pushing of public stuff into private pockets, which is going on everywhere. It's not a Democratic issue. It's not a Republican issue. It is a multinational issue. And the big issues are renewable energy, sports, housing, all this stuff. Like, I don't understand. I mean, we need to reclaim our brains in Simsbury that this is what is going on. We have a history of commitment to public stuff and public discourse and all that kind of stuff. I am here tonight not because I like to be on TV or I like to come to meetings. Anyone knows me, I hate meetings. Like, I will not have meetings. Have I contacted any of you ever? Never. I don't contact you. But I will stand up for the truth, and the truth never tires. And I will be here every time to stick up for this. And I will create a document like that gentleman just mentioned, because somehow we're not recognizing this pattern of behavior in our own town. And related to the sustainability plan, if there's a proposal to use our town land for renewable energy, and yet we haven't used our parking lots, our school roofs, and we are ignoring the hundreds and hundreds of acres in the north end. And that's proposed on Monrovia. It's not honest. It's not honest math. When are we gonna do critical thinking and do the right math and use the right words? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here for public audience? Okay, the next item on the agenda is moving things to the consent agenda. I'm going to see if I'm going to ask if we can move Selectman action items A, B, and C, and appointments and resignations A and B, and if anybody would like to make a different motion to that, I'm open to that.
So moved. Do you want? Oh, go ahead.
I have some questions on C,
Okay,
the retirement income plan.
okay, great. So if we move A, B of selectmen action and A and B appointments and resignations, can I have that motion? Yeah.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll talk about C. Okay, we're here to also recognize Lorna Wright for 41 years of service. I'm going to turn that over to Mark.
Thank you, Chair. You know, we wasn't that long ago, might have been the prior meeting or maybe the meeting before that, where I also had the distinct privilege of recognizing 4 decades of service. It just seems here in Simsbury that, you know, we've got such a wonderful community, but we've also got a wonderful workforce. And so tonight I'd like to give a big shout out to Lorna Wright, who is celebrating over 40 years, another 40-year service individual to our Simsbury Public Library. She'll be retiring in December. For 40 years, we present this decorative Simsbury vase along with the thanks of a grateful nation and certainly a grateful town. I'm really pleased to do 2 of these back to back because recently I was told wrongly by someone, I think possibly even in public comment, that there's a lot of turnover at the library and a lot of people coming and going, and that's just not the case. So 40 years, thank you to Lorna Wright, and thank you, Chair,
Lorna.
for letting us
Yeah, it's a rich to have
recognize
here.
another wonderful town employee. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is she working tonight?
We invited her to be here, she was a little shy, so
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Lorna, from the Board of Selectmen.
thank you, Chair.
The next item we have is we have the Sustainability Committee here. Jamie Luchek is here to present. We try to keep it in 15 minutes. I'm sure we'll have
do my
questions
best.
for you guys, but since we moved a lot to the consent agenda, you're up.
Challenges forward, alright. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak with you tonight about our sustainability plan, part 1, energy. And thank you so much to Susan and to all of our volunteers, to Mark Scully, our former chair, and our vice chair, Bear Faithful, and of course our Department of Public Works support from Tom and Chris. So I'm gonna remind folks who aren't maybe as familiar what the Sustainability Committee's purpose is. So of course, this was approved by the Board of Selectmen in April 2023, and actually Susan gave some of the history to the committee. But at this moment, our purpose is to advise the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education on policy for town and schools, and that includes a clean energy plan. We also collaborate with the Department of Public Works, which we're nestled under, to provide sustainability education and resources to Simsbury residents and the town and officials. We promote community awareness, so sustainability programs like the Power Smart Energy solar battery campaign that we ran earlier this year, and we support Simsbury's sustainable CT certification efforts. We also play a role, very small but important role, in the plan of conservation and development in implementing that plan. I'm not gonna go through this whole slide, but it is important to know that back in 2022, when the folks were putting together the plan of conservation and development, there were town meetings, there were online surveys, and there was a very real effort to get feedback from our residents in town about all sorts of topics, of which sustainability was identified among 716 participants as an area of high importance, yet relatively low performance here in town. And so when we look at that maybe by the numbers, sustainability was actually the third most important topic to people that engaged with the POCD process. And we know that 37% of households here in Simsbury have actually taken part in energy audits in their homes, which is substantially over the state average. So there is a will here, there is an interest here in town about sustainability. Yet when you look at how we're translating that into action, we rank 113 out of 170 in terms of installed renewable energy capacity by town. And when you look at the greenhouse gas emissions, that we have roughly 9 tons emitted per person here in Simsbury, slightly below the state average, yet 3 times as much as the state's mandated 2050 goal of 3 tons per person. So that is just something to really be aware of. And when we think about energy expenditures here in Simsbury, so on the left you see a pie chart, and that is actually $105 million per year spent here amongst businesses, town offices, residents. And you see electricity is $34 million of that per year, natural gas $12 million. So how can you start to talk about the financial impacts and savings potential of sustainability? So on the right-hand side, you see some school districts comparable to ours. There are many more across the district that have already been investing in solar arrays at the schools in order to save money. Naugatuck just announced $850,000 anticipated annual savings through school solar. So this is something, of course, the previous person who spoke in public audience touched on. You know, we don't necessarily want to take up our public land. This is just talking literally about taking advantage of buildings that currently exist. And if we do nothing, if we just keep things as they are today, what does that look like? Well, doing nothing is a very risky scenario. So if you think about the fact that electricity costs are going to continue to soar as AI drives demand for a limited power, grid. Think about what you're paying, whether at home or in your offices here, for electricity already. In Connecticut, as of May 2025, the average electricity cost went up 18.4% versus the year prior. So as you see, some projected estimates have AI driving as much as 12% of electric demand in the nation as of 2028. That is now, that is not that far in the future. We're going to be paying more for a limited supply. So what can we do about this? One option exists through the Connecticut Green Bank. So the Connecticut Green Bank is the nation's first green bank. It accelerates the green economy using limited public dollars to attract private capital investment. So this was established by the Connecticut legislature in 2011. And it actually also adds a bit of incentive through public tax incentives and things like that that are available to us here in Connecticut. In 2021, the Green Bank's model expanded to include more infrastructure, environmental infrastructure projects. And since its inception, it has actually deployed over $3.1 billion in capital for clean energy projects across the state of Connecticut. When we look at the ROI here, for every dollar of public funds committed by the Green Bank, an additional $6.70 is invested by private capital. So what does this mean for us here in Simsbury? Well, one example is by working with the Green Bank and their Solar Map Plus program, you can actually have our schools become sites for solar arrays, as Latimer Lane is already, ready to go and ready to do. They would handle everything from the site assessment and design, the RFPs, the contractor selection, and the implementation, all through no-cost technical support with no money upfront. And this is something, of course, staff resource would be involved here in our municipality. However, this is not asking us to enter into any agreements without financial analysis and not asking for a dollar out of our budget at this moment in time. So when we think about what we're asking today and how this can all come together and be part of a longer term plan for Simsbury to generate those savings, if we look at improving energy efficiency, so there's 4 main pieces to part 1, our energy plan here today. The first being improving energy efficiency. In our schools and towns, what does that look like? We're not asking for mandates, and we are certainly not asking for funds to be committed tonight. We have an awareness that there are some staffing impacts, and that's sensitive, and there will need to be prioritization conversations. And that, if it's the 9th important thing that has to get done, then so be it. But in schools and towns, can we benchmark and take advantage of the energy audits that are already being done, just so that we understand how we can measure and how we can improve? Can we establish guidelines for new construction here in town, working with the subject matter experts across our departments, making sure that sustainability is embedded in choosing the materials or the energy decisions as the plans are being penciled. For residents and businesses, we want to continue to promote energy audits. Again, just promote. We want to be able to continue to tell people what exists across the state that they can tap into and potentially benefit from. From the solar storage and energy savings perspective, schools and towns, this is where we do want to set a goal. Do we revisit the goal? Potentially, but let's say today, 50% of the energy needs can be produced by solar by 2030. That's feasible. We can have, again, as I pointed out, someone like Connecticut Green Bank come in and help us prove that feasibility out, prove the financial model out before we ever commit to anything. But let's set the goal. Residents and businesses, again, we want to promote solar and battery storage with the goal of 50% energy in town being generated via solar by 2035. Zero emission HVAC. So when we're considering in schools and town buildings, the boiler went. What are we going to replace it with? We're building a new building. What's that HVAC system going to look like? Can we consider zero emission heat pumps? Consider. Again, that's the word that's in this plan, is simply consider. Residents and businesses, we're going to continue to promote the availability of heat pumps with a goal of 30% adoption by 2030. Electric vehicles. So in the schools in town, can we actually study and report on the feasibility of electrifying our fleet, of school bus purchases, electric school bus purchases, and what the charging needs are in town? Some of this work is already being done, so we're not necessarily creating new work streams either. And for residents and businesses, again, continuing to promote electric vehicle adoption amongst the residents in town. So what we gain, essentially energy savings and long-term resilience. I'm not going to break it down piece by piece there, but I'm hoping that tonight, and I'm asking from you tonight, that the board will endorse and ideally adopt the sustainability plan, part 1, energy, as submitted. With the understanding that no projects will proceed until appropriate reviews have taken place and financial liability and staffing support is confirmed by the appropriate stakeholders. We really feel confident that together we can make Simsbury a model of smart, sustainable leadership across Connecticut. I thank you for your time.
Is that Simsbury Farms with the
It is with the solar array.
I'm sure some people on the board might have questions. Kevin, if you would like to add anything as the liaison, do you wanna just weigh in a
I'll just
little?
say that I've enjoyed working with this group that's committed to a sustainable future. And some of the comments earlier about climate change and all that, I'll be blunt, honestly can be sometimes it's hard to receive, that message. From my perspective and the fiduciary responsibility here on the board and related to this plan and how it can support our work here, that the long-term viability and how the positive impact can result in savings for us over the long term after initial investments and things like battery storage and solar, and then also increase our resiliency during times when there are power outages and other things that are responsible for us to consider. We've already seen, for instance, savings in transportation in the police department when we've moved to hybrid electric vehicles to support their work, and because a lot of their time is idle, I think that we could pursue that in other areas and other departments as well. So I'll just put a plug in for the work that's been done here, and I think it's important for us in our discussion tonight to consider our action here and how it will impact the goal setting for the next biennium when the new board is seated. That's all for me.
Thank you. I have questions, but I wanna let anybody else weigh in or speak up.
I mean, I think the elephant in the room is the federal government is cutting back on
sustainability and solar and losing the incentives to go in that direction. Do you see this as being viable as it ends at the end of the year? Cause I know like Tesla's reached out to me and like, oh, well, get your solar panels up now because it's going away, all the incentives. So how do you see that moving forward? Is it something the state can support? Is there enough financing that you say there's zero cost to this? Do you see without federal support that we'll be able to do this?
It's a great question and thank you for it. So we were hoping we would have had some progress already on some of the larger school solar initiatives this year where we could have capitalized or taken advantage of some of those federal tax credits that are ending. That being said, there is still a very small window of opportunity for federal credits that ends in after the first half of next year and is now restricted only to materials from specific countries that have been approved as there's a phrase for it, I'm not remembering it correctly, but essentially partner countries. That list has not been solidified yet. We do know that will of course reduce your supplier pool and increase demand for that limited supplier pool. So you would have to look at those numbers and that's something that the Green Bank would be doing the work on and would present the business case and we would have to take advantage of that. Thankfully, Connecticut is still a believer and has state goals that are set that they're marching towards and they are making there are state tax dollars on the table now specifically for schools that will also be a limited window of availability and it is sort of first come first funded. But I expect that initiatives like that will continue.
And also too, I know they're getting rid of the incentives to build out EV charging.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's a large cost and I just have trouble figuring out how we can move forward with incentivizing businesses or even on town property that we could have more because in Simsbury there's not really much charging available.
Correct.
So if the plan is to move towards that direction, how can we get to that point? I guess maybe this
I think
process
first we're saying, let's just agree that we want to explore it. And that's essentially, so when you look at the language in the plan, we are not saying we are mandating that we have a certain percent of chargers here in town. It's saying, let's explore the viability. And there could be a model that develops because the market creates a need, right? And an opportunity where maybe there is a fee. I don't know what will be coming next in terms of electric vehicle chargers that businesses might want to install on their property or that might make sense for us as a town to install. But let's look at the feasibility is what we're asking here today.
I have a question, and I know Tom's here too. The Latimer Lane Solar Ready, right? Whose decision is that to implement solar on Latimer Lane? Is it a Board of Ed decision or is it a Board of Selectmen decision? Like who owns the schools implementing solar?
Mark wants to jump on that. It's a tricky question. I would say arguably, the schools are town buildings, they're town resources. Historically, the roofs and how they're maintained has been managed through the Board of Education staff. It's solar ready in terms of all of the conduits are there, the roof is load rated. It's just a matter of finding a solar installer and making that interconnection. So it's a decision.
So if
We have spoken with the superintendent and his staff. They're actually already in conversations with Green Bank and another nonprofit that does similar work that could, help take that ball and run with it, so.
okay.
But saying here tonight, adopting this plan here tonight puts a little bit of gravitas behind the work. And also the expiring credits puts a little bit of, not haste, but, a sense of urgency to it.
Okay, and then the discussion, the prioritization really is not in here, right? I mean, so that would have to happen. So the way I see it, what Kevin said is really what I'm thinking is if we were to accept this plan, we don't know who will be back here, but we always will be starting our budget process and we'll be looking at goals and priorities for the next board. And if the P O C D includes a recommendation to do this, this is something that we should carry forward. I'm just not, I like that you included the not proceed without appropriate reviews, and financial viability and also resource availability is another concern that we have. So I hate to say we'll accept it, you know, I'm happy to accept the plan as written, and if the word accept versus endorse is different, I guess I'm trying to understand. Sounds like we're gonna commit to the same things regardless of the wording, and that we would take your recommendation and then move forward with the plans, talk to Tom, see what is feasible financially, resource-wise. So just trying to clarify what we think on that front. Do you wanna, go ahead.
I have a question and then I
Certainly.
may have comment. And it's actually kind of like a Tom question as well. Tom and Chris. I know it's two things. I know we had some EV stations and we looked at other areas in town to have EV stations. I know we talked about up at the farms and where are we with that? And
Unfortunately, we are in the queue
okay.
for the program. Unfortunately, with the way the program works and the actual cost to install the EV chargers, there would be out-of-pocket funding from the town to install new EV chargers. We're looking here, the library are the two top priorities, Eno and the farms, and the new chargers would be set up so that we would have the ability, if the town wanted to charge for the charging. And it's just a question of whether there's gonna be enough money in the program, and when there is enough money in the program, whether this board and the Board of Finance would be supportive of the cost difference between the grant and what it would actually cost to have the chargers installed.
So that leads to my other question was, and I know you have to look at the funding sources and review the financial viability, but you touched on it a little bit. But would there be captured savings in initiating some of these things that you know, I hate to use the word spend to save, but like where, you know, that we would have those captured savings that you can easily identify early on of opportunities for us. Either it's an outright savings now because it's actually a more cost effective option, or we see a plan of where our savings will be for you know, operational costs or spend costs.
So this is not, what they're presenting today is not new.
Correct.
This is something we've been working on with Susan's help
Yes.
since 2008. And there's been a lot of success made, and maybe we haven't done a good enough job of really presenting it. Silly things like all the lighting in all of the
Correct.
town buildings is LED lighting.
Right.
We have our building thermostat set so that rooms like this, larger rooms when they're not occupied, in the wintertime get 10 degrees cooler, and in the summertime get 10 degrees hotter. And so you may have 3 or 4 minutes when you first walk in where you're like, it's not exactly great. It's because we're trying everything we can to be as energy efficient as possible. Generally speaking, we've been able to tackle a lot of projects that have a ROI of 8 years or less. It really becomes, you know, to me, it's an obvious one to get done. I think we did our streetlights a number of years ago. We purchased all of our streetlights, saved tens of thousands of dollars a year doing that. And, you know, we did do projects like the solar at the skating center, using the sun to make ice. At the same time, we put solar on public works. Unfortunately, on the town side, we do not have a lot of great buildings or parking lots for solar. We have a lot of trees and we have a lot of buildings that have architecturally impressive roofs with peaks and valleys, and they don't set up as well. We don't have large flat roofs that other buildings in towns have. But we're game to look at different things. And the other thing that's been challenging over the years, and look, Mark Scully is here as well, there have been efforts that we've tried and they haven't necessarily always borne fruit. You know, we've looked at solar at different facilities, including at the landfill at one point in time, and put a lot of energy into that, but it didn't pan out. And sometimes that's the challenge of, you know, trying to get to that cutting edge.
Okay, thank you.
First of all, I liked the pun of putting energy into that, but
That was when we did the ribbon cutting, the mugs. So
Oh, I have those mugs.
I guess my question is with endorsing the plan. I think it's always important with any project to obviously look at energy efficiency and how long it would take to see a return on the investment and the long-term savings with that. So I think that's something we should do with any project. I just at the same time want to ensure that by endorsing this, it doesn't commit us to prioritizing certain things in the budget above others. So I think it should be a part of obviously a bigger plan. I like talking about the strategic plan, and this would obviously be a large part of it. That I believe we should always look at in any project, but to specifically, I just don't want us to obligate ourselves to specific things in the budget by endorsing this already without for us seeing what other capital needs we have as a community and what kind of grand list growth we see and that sort of thing. So
There's zero budget ask. So, zero budget ask, zero budget commitment. It's again, and so I'm putting back the slide that kind of speaks to the principles of the plan, which you've received as a larger Word document. But we're talking about benchmarking and energy audits that are already underway, so it's not incremental cost to perform. Or in the case of doing it in residences and businesses, that's homeowners, and for lower income, there's even fees that are waived. When we're talking about the solar and at the schools and in the town, we're saying there are ways, whether it's the Green Bank or other nonprofit partners out there, that can do this with no money out, coming out of our pockets. And again, only if it makes financial sense would we commit to doing it. So the HVAC, we're saying when you're getting a bid on a new HVAC system, consider a zero emission option. We're not even saying you must choose, right? So we're trying to make sure that the principles in here are simply to consider and to take advantage of the hard work that is already being done and to actually bake that into a larger plan and to put that together, with the endorsement so that we understand that this is something that Simsbury is going to hold hands on and move forward with.
yeah, I think that is important for us to do and to always look at those options. The other thing, our public safety subcommittee, when Eversource comes, they often promote as well the home energy audit. So I don't know if that's something that you communicate with them on, but I
Yes.
think that's great.
They had a booth at our sustainability fair at the library this year.
Can you put your slide back up? And the one last thing that I will say,
Sorry, this one?
the motion slide.
Yes.
One thing I do wanna point out, that I hope that we'll do, whoever's here in the next term, is look at the policies that we have in place. And one of the policies that we had talked about, I think with Mark Scully a long time ago, and even Tom, is that public building potentially could look at when they're doing a project to do a kind of a side calculation on what the energy piece would cost, which was what happened with Latimer. We did it after the fact and there was no money.
What I'd say is I think, good architectural design, which includes having appropriate mechanical contractors on board, they should be doing that analysis.
Yeah.
It really is inherent to doing your job properly to say, instead of buying the cheapest boiler that we can possibly buy,
Yeah.
spewing out, emissions and everything else, let's look at what is the real life cycle cost over the next 25 years. The challenge that I think we hit is there a point where Simsbury is gonna say, you know what, it is more expensive over the next 25 years to own this cutting edge technology that's gonna have zero emissions? Is that an expenditure that the town is worth spending in order to have that better environmental footprint? And it's going beyond just the dollars and cents that I think is the next phase of where we've been. I think for the last 20 years, we've been looking at the most energy efficient projects we have with a dollar sign, but we have not been looking at things in terms of emissions based decisions.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to endorse the sustainability plan, part 1, energy, as submitted, again, with the understanding that no projects will proceed without appropriate reviews. I'd like to include prioritization and financial viability in there.
Second.
Okay, there's a tie goes to
I defer to Selectman Yaisley.
Okay, the tie goes to Diana. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Thank you for
Okay.
your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Scott, you should have been faster.
Too slow there, I had to start my
Okay, so now we're gonna discuss the retirement benefit.
Well, you have to do
And
the
I'm gonna let,
first selectman's
wait,
report.
oh, my first selectman's report, sorry, I was jumping ahead. I do have a first selectman's report, for anybody who's still here. So the big news that we had was it yesterday already? The ISCC is partnering with St. Joseph's, University of St. Joe's to bring D3 men's and women's hockey here. Kelly and Adam worked really hard to bring that. We had the president of St. Joseph's here. We had the athletic director. We also had Coach Calhoun here from UConn. So it was kind of a big, exciting event for a lot of us. And we want to thank the Simsbury Main Street Partnership for helping make that happen. And just say that I think that this is a huge thing for the town of Simsbury. We're watching the North End grow and expand, and the work that they're doing is great for economic development, and it puts Simsbury on the map. So I'm super excited about that. Last week, we had the town forest ribbon cutting. You can watch that video. There's a whole video with all of us in it, but that was also exciting to see the water dredged. And the next nice day, I'm gonna try to teach my dog how to swim there. The Nod Road Solar Project, everybody's heard that that's happening kind of off to the side. No action's been taken at this time, but I've asked for the town to have the link to all the documentation, the letters, any follow-ups, timelines, so that it's all somewhere on the town website where we can find it. And I'll include that link in my first selectman's report. Some news that came up, I think it was last week, that I'm sharing with the board and everyone is that the state turned down our request for Elm Street no-through trucks. So what I'm gonna hope that maybe we'll bring back to the board is to see what other options we have if we wanna apply to the state. I know we have tried that in the past and that didn't work, but just to make a last ditch effort there. Early voting starts Monday at the library. I do wanna thank everybody running for office, it includes all of us here, but just say, it's not an easy thing to do and wish all the candidates that are running good luck. I did attend the Friends of Simsbury Farms golf tournament. I played with Curtis, Tom Taberski, and Max. Heather also was playing there. I do wanna say that Max won the gas grill. I didn't put tickets in for it cause I didn't want it. But it wasn't a cheated thing, and I also wanna say that Heather won the women's longest drive, so congrats to Heather. And also that Curtis can really crush a golf ball.
I thought you were gonna say something else.
I don't wanna, and then Terriffill School, again, congratulations on the 100th year. Both of our kids went there and it was really a nice celebration. There was also a 200th celebration on the green that same weekend. They had a band there and that was a nice event. The USA waste leak on Gordon and in that neighborhood, the town has been keeping up everybody informed on that and doing the best they can to make sure that the information's out there. I wanna thank Mark and Diane for their continued generosity, Ornstein, on keeping Simsbury warm. And the last thing I wanna mention is the coffee with a cop last week. It was really nice and fun to hang out at the coffee spot with everybody, especially Clifton. And the donations they gave for free coffee, and just to also give the great car show that was held this weekend for our ACO, Deb Clark. That's all I have. I'm gonna turn it over to the town manager.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. Wendy touched on everything I had except one thing, actually two things. The Eno Memorial Hall parking lot safety improvement plan is underway with a great job over there, and that's gonna continue through the end of the month, is that right, Tom?
End of next week is gonna be the bulk of it, then you're gonna get parking back and maybe finish up work.
Great, so we're excited about that and we've been updating the public and local businesses about that. The other thing, Chair, I wanted to take just a few minutes and update the board as I did a month or two ago about the Performing Arts project. The Performing Arts Center project that involves the Next Act construction of the band shell. So as we talked about a month or two ago, and we've updated you a couple of times, the project costs are extremely tight. No surprise there. The most recent curveball we've gotten on this unfortunately throws us potentially over the referendum number. And this requires me to brief the board a little bit more thoroughly because we're now at pretty much at a decision point and an inflection point on the project. The latest cost I'll call it an overrun, is really attributable to just rising costs over the last 6 months or so. In addition to the requirement of our fire marshal for some pretty expensive fire suppression equipment over there that quite clearly we needed. We've known we've needed it. We haven't known that the extent and the expense of it throws us by our account right now potentially over budget by about $125,000, give or take. There may be some other news coming in over the next week or so that can move that number either worse or better. So what we're suggesting at this point is just really no action tonight, but just to alert the board again to the trouble that we're experiencing due to costs. And to let you know that, it's not just the cash, we could find some cash and that this board and the Board of Finance could be asked to approve that. But we're now dangerously close to exceeding the referendum number. And what that changes is the dynamic of the conversation now becomes not so much focused on, where do we find the extra 100 or 300, whatever it is, but having to go back out potentially to the public and to your constituents and to our taxpayers to indicate that and get a new approval essentially for a slightly higher referendum number. That said, I can give you a range of what we think at this point we're looking at. And that range is somewhere between that 125,000 that we know about right now to a high end of about 380, give or take. And again, we're working hard, Tom, and engineering is working with Millennium and with others to do further value engineering. We're having continuing conversations with the fire marshal because again, this is primarily related to the public safety component and the expense of the essentially having to put in a hydrant and a fire line, water service line there and so forth, right? Tom, do I have all of this right? I know some of this is pretty technical, but is that pretty much it?
I think you hit the big picture, which is the fire suppression is good, not just for the new part of the building, it would be for the entire structure. Because we would be putting fire suppression on the stage area as required by the fire marshal, you end up with two systems, one being a wet system and one being a dry system because it would be exposed to wintertime temperatures, and it's just a expense the job is potentially not able to handle.
We'll just say before we close, and I'm happy to answer questions on this, we really don't know much more detail yet on the numbers. That'll be within the next week or 10 days, we'll iron this out. But just to remind the board, and I know you know this, but more for the public, $900,000 state grant and money on the table from the state that really drives this conversation, I think, and everything that we've got lined up, and to say nothing of the fact that the Performing Arts Center and their funders and donors have raised over $904,000 as well, and so we kind of feel at the staff level that we're frustrated and a little disappointed that the expenses are exceeding expectations. But that said, we're gonna push ahead and we'll be back to the board shortly. Thank you, Chair.
I have a question.
Yep.
What is the number that would hit the referendum?
It's 2.7 million and change, and we are, within a few thousand of that at the moment. There's some workarounds that we're looking at, there is a concept being considered that, you need the fire hydrant anyway, so it doesn't necessarily need to be the water line, might not need to be included in the project because there's an argument that says, and the fire marshal is really saying you need that in any event. And so there's a possibility that could be backed out of the project. You'd still need the money. It might change the referendum question. I think for us, the issue at the staff level is, I think if you knew that this was it and that you weren't going to potentially encounter any other unforeseen things, we would say let's just go with the 125 and try to stay under that referendum number, I think is a fair, and that was certainly the way we were leaning towards going, because nobody wants to go back but I think where we're leaning at this point at the staff level and in meetings is that with still some things unknown ahead of us, it's probably better to recommend to the board that we seek about $380,000 and some of that, if not half of it, would be replenishing the contingency line in the project. If you'll recall my previous briefing, the problem with the project from the beginning, as Thomas said, is that we didn't have enough in the contingency line. Typically, you start the projects with a contingency, so when this happens, you don't run into having to come back to the board for additional funding. We were very, very tight on the contingency anyway. We shared that with the board. The decision was made to go forward knowing that, and here we are. So I think we're gonna be back to you in a week or two and say we're gonna recommend going back, better safe than sorry.
And one thing that I asked Mark for when I heard about this is I'd like to see the options that we have, the timelines for the costs and the timelines for those options, because they're working on the assumption that we want them open next summer, right? And so that's just one thing, we wanna make sure that that's the feasible way to go. So you mentioned we may need a special meeting at some point if we can get this sooner than our 10th meeting, so.
We'll come back to you as soon as we know. I think the other issue, which isn't really for tonight's discussion, but just to remind folks, and I think Tom knows this better than I do, that there's also potential delays in getting steel that's up to the specs of this particular project, again, because of the fire suppression and the heat resistance and the engineering of this, which is not my forte, but I think if there is going to be a potential delay in getting the steel, then that gives you the opportunity to go back to referendum, get that contingency line up, and just do this the right way. If the steel it's still possible to keep the timeline, then obviously your perspective shifts a little bit in favor of we need them open next season. The 4th of July is coming, it's the 250th anniversary of our nation, it's a wonderful, we're already looking forward to that season. So, but again, my job is to give the board all the information it needs to make the decision. I just didn't wanna surprise the board with all of this without giving you a heads up that it's coming.
Oh, I just was gonna I did want to also, the finance director was part of the conversation, and I did ask Mark to reach out to the Board of Finance chair at least to see what's feasible from their perspective too, and or any recommendations. I think, and then Kevin had a question.
My question was just along with that timeline, if we could have an option for looking at different funding sources. Meaning like
Yes,
still
well,
needs
that was a question that was, and that's a technical question. If there was, let's just say that there was additional donated funds. That would be fine, the town wouldn't be responsible for the funds, but it would.
Right, still have to go to
Exactly.
right, but I think it would be, if we got to that point, it would be important for the public to know
Absolutely.
where the funding is coming from, whether it's private donations or whether it's some capital reserve, whatever it is. They would like to know whether they're being taxed on it or not.
Kevin?
The constraints on the state grant, could you remind me what the right left limits are for us to actually take advantage of?
There was some, the amount is 900,000, Kevin. The issue for us was whether we are on the hook to reimburse the state if the project isn't completed and a CO issued and we can't go over the referendum number. There is a risk factor here that at some point a municipality is on the hook to refund and essentially turn back the state funds. We don't think that we're headed anywhere near that direction. That's part one. Part two is the amount of time that we have to complete the project under the terms of that grant. At one point, we were thinking that was a year. It's
5.
actually 2.
That was 5.
It can be as much as 5, but we I think you have to ask for additional time. Is it 3?
Okay,
So it's
Split the
not 1,
difference.
which is good.
yeah,
And
3.5, we got 3.5.
I'll take that.
we're not in any danger of that at this point either.
Okay.
So those two risks are out there, but we don't think that those are too troublesome.
And I was, well, you I read it, but you probably know it better than I do, so you could say what you were gonna say.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, our big thing right now is being aware of keeping our foot on the gas in the
Yeah.
meantime. We have to get certain things ordered. Our goal at this point is that everything is able to run July 1 at the facility because the symphony is the reason that's there.
Yeah.
And if not, we have to come up with, a way and a workaround.
Which is
And
additional
lastly,
cost.
Wendy, we mentioned in that meeting, but just for your colleagues, the risk of delay is the risk of increased prices, and that's the real key there. Because
Well,
right now
they
we're
would
looking
need
at,
trailers again and things like that, so.
you know,
Yeah, it's
we
not
think the
good.
range of 125 to 388 is our estimate right now. Keeping the project on time is assuming the steel can be delivered. Anything changes the timeline, it's the increased costs that present a likelihood of this becoming a bigger problem, so.
Right, like if we can't push it up to next fall,
I
then the
think
costs are gonna be.
gotta keep it on time and pay the piper is kind of where we're
We wanna
going.
be done with the project,
Right.
as we all
Sorry
think.
about that.
Any more town
No.
manager news?
That's it.
Anything else you wanna tell us?
Covered everything for us, thank you, Wendy.
Okay, I'm gonna do selectmen, liaison and subcommittee, so I'll start with Curtis.
So I don't typically report on housing authority, but Mark joined me at the housing authority last Friday.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Did a good presentation on, farms.
No, you did, you had my back, thank you very much.
No, so it was a good conversation.
Yeah.
There was an expression of frustration with our board that we don't know enough about the housing authority, and so I offered out to them, whether it's for our next meeting or meeting of future board, for them to come and do a presentation on what the housing authority is and how we can interact with them and how we can move forward with these opportunities where we need to kind of have a larger plan to kind of figure out how we can handle affordable housing in Simsbury and utilize the housing authority. They would also like for the to invite the board of selectmen to out to the facility so that everyone can see what the work that they do and we can have greater appreciation for the work that they do. So that was housing. The zoning committee reviewed proposals for the what's it called, the regulations review, so they can understand, they had two different companies come in to understand, how they go about looking at our zoning regs. And then the police commission, had been contacted by a few people who had concerns about homeless people in Simsbury. There are 3 current homeless people in Simsbury. The police commissioner is working with them to be sure that they can stay warm as time gets colder, and trying to find solutions for them with their families. We had 2 officers retire. Kyle Kobe retired. Tracy Dunn retired after 21 years of service. We currently have 5 officer vacancies, so we can expect an increase in overtime as far as the budget goes there. The majority of the records room has been completed, so will be approved before. You mentioned the coffee with the cop at the coffee spot, and then today I want to congratulate Officer or Sergeant now, Trevor Patel. He's now been promoted to sergeant as of today.
Okay, thanks. Heather?
I just had one for the planning department. They held a Terriffill neighborhood plan implementation work session yesterday at Terriffill Elementary School. It was very well attended. And it was great. People went around with stickers. It allowed residents to kind of focus on different projects and areas that they would like to see us focus on in the budget time. So that's all I have.
Thanks. Steve?
Simsbury Main Street Partnership met. They're working on convening a commuter lot acquisition panel. State Representative Melissa Osborne is a driving force on this. And this is also a part of that recommendation number 2 of the Simsbury Housing Policy Advisory Committee. So that is moving forward. We're pursuing our options, that's the limit of it. The office space vacancy project is going well. Just as a reminder for anyone interested, we have a 30% vacancy rate for commercial properties, but 27% is office space. So 3% is retail vacancy and 27% is office space, which is why we're undertaking this study. The EDC is at the ground level putting together the data collection right now. It's going well. That's the first step and it's moving forward. As you mentioned, Wendy, the Simsbury Main Street held the press conference yesterday announcing the 2 new varsity hockey teams from St. Joseph's coming to Simsbury and making us their home rink. Another part of it is also at that zoning meeting along with the dark sky thing on Monday. It's gonna be a good meeting. They're going to be asking for a hotel. We do have hotels in town, but they are quite often full and they are excellent hotels and they get the price they should. We don't have not a budget hotel, but a average hotel. This is part of the International Skating Center's forward progress in turning that whole area into an international sports complex, and it's very important as part of our economy to have this hotel. As I can personally speak to, people leave after the games. If they were in a hotel, they'd stay in our economy, they'd fill their car up here, they'd do all sorts of stuff. I think it's really important that we pursue the hotel. As a point of information though, there is no public comment, so if you want to contact zoning for the meeting on Monday, you would have to do it via email.
Those are great jobs.
Yes. EDC, the meeting is next week, so that hasn't happened yet, but part of that is our own town resident and CBRE Executive Vice President John McCormick will be at that meeting, and he's going to be discussing the extensive 27% vacancy rate for office space, so we're really throwing everything we can at it. Both of the economic development arms of the town are full force trying to push it forward, actively.
Thank you. Diana?
So for the Board of Ed, they met last night and they had a few different reports. They had an enrollment report, particularly surrounding including in magnet schools. They did a class size report and they did a legislative review on things that are affecting education and coming down from the state. From the Aging and Disability Commission, regarding that parking lot project that you mentioned, since the parking lot is closed, I just want to make sure the public knows that the meeting next week for the Aging and Disability Commission has been moved from Memorial Hall to the Apple Barn so that we do have several commissioners who are senior or has accessibility needs, and so it's a bit more accessible to access the Apple Barn. The fashion show Super Thursday happened last week and it was once again extremely well attended. Thank you to my fellow Board of Selectmen Kevin Veal, Wendy McStudis, and Heather Getz for once again participating in the fashion show. Everyone always has a good time and I liked our outfits again this year. It looked snazzy. Particularly your hat.
Oh, I love that hat. I did forget to bring it.
Yes.
Why didn't you wear it tonight?
Exactly.
I should have.
But it's always a really well attended event. Sensory Halloween event will be October 29th at the library from 4:30 to 6. And there is a Sweet Connections event this Sunday at the library, the 19th, which is featuring Chris Prosperi, who will be doing some cooking and cooking along with him, and it may be booked out, but if there's any spots, I recommend that you get on board with that because that will be delicious. This is actually something that I'm going to be bringing up tomorrow, next week at our Aging and Disability Commission meeting. Although it was not something that Aging and Disability Commission asked for, it is something that we often, or that they often advocate for. There was a request from a resident here in town who has accessibility needs, actually Chris Barnett, thank you very much, where they noticed some accessible signs for the accessible parking places, the handicap parking spaces, where the signage was deficient or inadequate or sometimes broken. So there was an assessment done by the town of locations that Some accessible signage is needed for the parking spaces, and notifications have been sent out to the local businesses, notifying them that per ADA requirements, there should be legible signage regarding where the parking spaces are. For Culture Parks and Rec, as I've already mentioned, the golf tournament was a huge success. And now they're getting ready to open winter sports and rink at Simsbury Farms. The SimPac, we're just gonna forget about it, not forget, but I don't need to talk about what Mark talked about, but they are currently negotiating their contract with Hartford Symphony Orchestra. Their contract is up next year, after next season, and they are renegotiating, hoping for actually a 10-year term rather than a 5-year contract. Has been done previously, and they are building out an exciting season for 2026 outside of the Hartford Symphony Orchestra concerts. I think people will be very excited. The Youth Services Advisory Board meeting did meet for the first time after the school year started, and they're looking at different events and projects and seminars to be taken. The one discussion that we did have that has really picked up that they noticed in schools amongst youth and in our community are these ZINs, which are a new tobacco product. They're little tabs, like little tobacco pouches, and they're finding them frequently in the trash cans. And they're feeling like a lot of parents and don't really know about it, and they want to try to look at a campaign about ZINs and the harms because again they're marketed with flavors and other ways, and they're easy, so you don't have to have you don't have to spit into anything, but they're giving a quick tobacco rush to youths who often then with that rush appear stoned or impaired in some way. But it is something that they have seen an increase, and those are supposed to be 21 and over. But the youth are accessing it, and they are seeing an increase in that in the schools.
One thing if they're looking for somebody to very educated in that, the person that I graduated with, one of my best school friends, is like a senior supervising person for the tobacco enforcement.
Oh, great.
At the state, and we've talked about this in school.
Okay.
We talked about
Well, yes,
this
we
in
would.
issues.
The Youth Services Advisory Board would love to connect with them and
if you I can
do a
give you her
presentation.
name
Yeah.
or tell her, she'd probably love to do it. 'Cause
That would be great.
She works with our PD here too.
Great. Thank you. And that's all I have.
Okay, Kevin?
Let's see, so thank you for the support on the Sustainability Committee's report, and I do think that it's something for us to consider in goal setting after the beginning of the biennium, and I do think that there are real opportunities for us in long-term cost savings as we start planning things out, and I support the idea of adding some constraints to policy or recommendations on policy, because if we're always going to value engineer a project, as we should for town residents, and that's just a very easy way. It's an easy area to cut additional funding and support that has long-term negative effects instead of for the short-term benefit, because I think educators or any of us would always have a bias toward something that's going to touch the constituent or the student the closest, a presentation, system or some other kind of thing. But the reality of being able to afford our buildings and provide the right sustainability in the long term is something that we don't want to forget about unnecessarily because of an easy short-term budget fix. The 250th committee, several volunteers I know has met with the town manager's office regarding planning for next year. There had been some discussion early on about the appropriateness of timing for a parade that might happen to be organized, by that committee, and I think the town manager is exploring a way that we can not burden, our law enforcement and other services and still have it on the 4th, even though that's a very busy weekend, and so I know that will be taxing potentially, and so we should consider what that is. That is following July 1, so interestingly, it's a different budget year conversation. So as that process begins, to plan these celebrations are one-time costs. And as we're planning for trying to make that celebration, remembering the significance of that event, the idea that there's an opportunity for education for all citizens about the realities of forming a fragile republic. And these are things that are really important points of discussion. And so I think that committee, even though it's a lot about parties and celebrating, I think there's a lot of good learning that can happen around that. So thanks to the town manager for providing that leadership to the committee as they're trying to make those plans and get the resources that they need to kick that off. The DEI Council is also trying to make its plans and setting its goals for the future and asking for guidance from the Board of Selectmen. One area that they're looking for advice and support from us, I know the first selectman has seen comment on this, is bringing in some sort of outside facilitator to engage the public on a discussion regarding housing. So that's something for us to consider, even if it's lower or no cost. Regarding that, the idea behind the facilitator, as the committee shared it, would be not disinterested, that sounds wrong, but an outside perspective to be able to facilitate a discussion on these issues that can become contentious quickly, but are still a real issue to be resolved. I have found surprisingly for myself, my work with the DI Council to be personally fulfilling, because the idea of talking about tough issues in an environment that allows for a lot of different viewpoints, I think is a healthy thing for our town and for democracy in general. So thanks for that, it's all for me.
Okay.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I forgot to mention something that important that I wanted to mention.
We do this every time, Diana,
Better be.
after the report, you
I'm
bring it
sorry.
up.
A lot of time.
Now, but this, I do want to make sure the public knows that next Thursday, October 30th, at Ethel Walker School, there is a joint special meeting between the Aging and Disability Commission and the Culture, Parks and Recs Commission on a second public engagement session regarding the splash pad. So I just wanted to make sure people knew.
And I committed myself to go to my first cabbage night at Antonio's. I've never gone in all my years in Simsbury, which I guess is, I shouldn't admit here, but we didn't take our kids to that, so I have to go this year. One other thing no one mentioned is the booze, as in boo, like Halloween boo, and brews for Saturday.
Spectacular.
At the Chamber's putting on as a partnership, so I thought we should mention that. Okay, now we can move to selectmen action, and the item that we have is to approve amendments to the Town of Simsbury Retirement Income Plan. I know we didn't have personnel last week because this was the high priority for personnel and HR to work on. And as not an expert in retirement, I'm going to let Mark provide context on this for the board.
Thanks so much, Chair. And just by way of background, when I'm during my 8 years in Hartford, I served on the Hartford Pension Commission. And the city of Hartford managed over $1 billion in assets under management in a pension fund, and it self-runs its pension just as the town of Simsbury does. So I do have some background in this. What's before you tonight is a proposed motion that would clarify our existing retirement plan. And in your packets, I'm just gonna walk you through a couple of the key documents and then touch some of the high-level points. You have typically, whenever there's a pension plan proposal, whether it's just a clarification, as is the case here, or if it's a more significant change to the plan, you're gonna find an analysis from the actuary. The town's actuary is and has been for many years now Milliman. And you'll see in your packet a letter dated October 8th from Milliman explaining the cost neutrality and certain other aspects of the actuarial analysis. Also in the packet is the actual draft amendment, which I'm gonna read just for the record. You'd be adding 2 sections, brief sentences to the retirement plan. One says that it would change, quote, his or her vested accrued benefit would be changed to, quote, the actuarial equivalent of his or her vested accrued benefit. So that's one change. And the second is there identified as number 2 by inserting the following at the end of the section. And it says, quote, provided however that such a commencement date shall not be later than the terminated participant's required beginning date as defined by section 10(3)(a) subsection 4. What do these 2 changes mean? In broad strokes, what we've encountered is 2 terminated vested employees of the ex-employees of the town who deferred retirement. The plan as it currently reads is not clear on whether the monthly benefit increases as a result of that deferral. So the easiest way to explain this is to reference Social Security. Somebody who takes an age normal Social Security retirement, say it's age 67. For those like me born in say 1960, my age normal would be 67. If I defer retirement until say age 70, the maximum, my monthly benefit would go up. The actuarial equivalent, those two numbers, whether I retire at 67 and get X dollars a month, or I retire at age 70 and I get Y dollars a month, are actuarially equivalent. And so long as they are actuarially equivalent, there is no fiscal impact to the plan actuarially. Obviously, as we've seen with other changes to the retirement plans over the years, and some of you are familiar with this, this is all of the things being equal. So if somebody's life expectancy were to change, then obviously the actual real dollars in a real dollar terms would change. But again, what we're talking about for clarity is the actuarial equivalent. Also in your packet is an exhibit which went with the Simsbury letter from Milliman from last week or two. This walks the board through an example of the change, using an example of somebody that would have received a $3,000 a month benefit now would receive a benefit of $3,300 and change, and it just walks you through. You'll see in paragraphs 1 and 2 there, for your review and consideration, the actual dollars in that example. So what we have and what precipitated this is two employees who deferred their retirement. Were we not to make this change, they would be entitled to the back pay for all of the retirement monthly payments that had been missed. It is unusual for a pension plan to not be clear. And one of the things that I think grew out of and I think educated me even further on this is that, I was struck with the actuary saying that it is true that if ever there was a document you need clarity in, it's your retirement plan. And what I want to be clear about tonight is that we're not saying the plan says you can't do it and we want the board to change it so you can do it. That's not what's before the board. What's before the board is a plan that doesn't tell us what we should do. And we're asking for the board to clarify what we should do. That analysis has been based on what Social Security does, what other municipalities do, what other plans do, and most importantly, what is the potential fiscal impact to the town. And again, on an actuarial basis, it's cost neutral. So these two employees would retire now, some years late, three years or so later than they could have, as described in the example, which is not specific to either of those two ex-employees. It's just an example for illustrative purposes only. There is no fiscal impact to the plan that would require our actuarially required contribution to change. And that is important. So every year we budget what's called an ARC, an actuarially required contribution that's based on an assessment that's done of the plan, what percentage of the plan is fully funded, what the investment rate of return is, what the assumed rate of return was, and whether you've made all of your ARC payments on time. And I just want to say for the public record that Simsbury is exemplary and is, absolutely one of the best communities in the state of Connecticut when it comes to the management of its pension plan, and no problem with ARC payments. And we account not just to this board, but to the Board of Finance and to the Retirement Plan Subcommittee. There are a lot of layers and a lot of eyes on this, and that's why we're very proud of the pension plan we have. So we recommend that the board approves this, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
I have a couple of questions. So could any future changes in interest rates or mortality changes, could that affect the cost neutrality?
I don't think it would affect the cost neutrality, because once a terminated vested person takes a retirement, that's locked in, that retirement is achieved. What would change is the effect of those changes on anyone who had not retired yet. So it's an interesting question, because with respect to the two people that deferred and that now we see clarity for, the answer is no change. And their benefit would remain the same, depending on whether this is approved or not. But with respect to future retirees, then our interest rate assumptions would affect their pension benefits. The actual rate of return, however, would not impact their benefits. And most importantly, a change to the mortality tables would change their benefits. I want to just take a minute on that. We did get some public comment on it, which we shared with the board relative to this issue, and it's a great point. The mortality table that's utilized by the town of Simsbury is, I think it's back to the 1970s or 80s. It's old. We've looked at the need to get that updated. It is on our agenda. We'll have something back to the board in the spring on that after Milliman takes a look at it. And there are newer actuarial tables. I think, they all have numbers, and the actuaries live and breathe this stuff. But Heather, the most important thing that the town can do in the coming year is to update the mortality table. And that's really not just for the benefit of the town, but it's for the benefit of the retirees. As life expectancies change, and they have changed over the last 5 to 6 years, I think it's important that you not use mortality tables that are 10, 20, 30 years old. So if you're watching, thank you for that comment, and we are aware that that needs to be done.
Okay, and then also, could there be any implications on collective bargaining or anything, or is this nothing to do with that?
It depends who you ask. Since you're asking me, I'll say no. And the attorneys say no too. Although, it's an interesting question, because first and foremost, anybody who's retired is no longer a part of the union. And you're changing retirement, it's a benefit that they receive after, right? In other words, let's say Curtis is in a collective bargaining group right now. It doesn't mean that you can't change the mortality table. We're not gonna seek, I can tell you now, we're not gonna seek union agreement and buy-in on changing the mortality table. We feel, management feels that we have the right to administer the plan under the terms of the plan and under the terms of state and federal laws that govern municipal pension plans. And those are quite specific. And there are many IRS rules about this as well, that I should say, and I'm not an accountant. My own view as a former union president is not a subject of collective bargaining. What is a collective bargain subject is something like the multiplier effect, or so the multiplier is what portion of your salary are you paid per year for every year of service, right? So those types of things, like what is your benefit? You'll recall this board for the unaffiliated members about a year ago made a change to the multiplier. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe we reduced the multiplier from 2.5 to 2, which would have a very positive impact on the plan, the potential plan liability for future employees. And we made that change effective for all new hires hired after, I think, last July or something, right? And you could do the same thing with collectively through the collective bargaining process with the unions. So I would say if you're changing the multiplier effect, or if you're changing the employee's contribution, and everybody contributes to their pension, a small percentage of their paycheck is deducted to contribute to pension, that is a subject of collective bargaining. But things like the mortality table, amending the plan language to, as long as it's actuarially equivalent, we don't think it needs collective bargaining.
Thank you.
Now that we're talking, I just have one question. I just want you to verify just a yes or no answer.
I'll try.
In the personnel and confidential letter, October 8th, paragraph 5, we haven't explored any legal issues. I just wanna yes answer that Mike Harrington's letter satisfies that paragraph.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to ask for a motion effective October 15th, 2025 to adopt the proposed clarifying amendment to the town of Simsbury retirement income as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye, okay, no opposed. Okay, so that passes. The next item we have is approval of the September 24th, 2025 regular meeting minutes.
Move to approve the minutes of September 24th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Okay,
If you're okay with me starting on page 3 of the minutes, in the consent agenda, it only references the second. I think I moved the consent agenda that night, just for
Okay.
the record. The addition to the agenda item, there was just a mention that there may be action, so I would say that
you can say it. I asked if there was any motion and you said there might be.
yeah, there might be, yep, so that's that. On page 4 and elsewhere throughout the document, there's a reference to the SHPAC, but it has the I in it, which is just a funny.
Yeah.
It's the pronunciation of it, but not the actual thing.
Mm.
In the section on the housing policy discussion and possible action under item D, on the last paragraph regarding the motion, it mentions the DEI June meeting, and it was the Board of Selectmen June meeting. Those are my requests for changes.
Okay, anybody else?
I have just a word that's spelled incorrectly on page 5. It should say warning, it says wearing.
I would just correct in the housing policy that I basically said that in the future, we wanna look at the policies. I wasn't asking us to look at them yet, I said that we would be looking at policies in the future if we're here, where we need new or changes to existing policies, and that the abatement policy, which is a recommendation in the SHPAC, would be one that we would be looking at.
So you wanna strike the asking Mr. Nelson part, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that I have plans to, in the future, whoever's here, to look at our policies and to consider look at the abatement policy as recommended in the SHPAC report under that cover. Okay, that'll work, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay,
Could make one motion to make all those amendments if you'd like, Chair.
yep, I'd like for a motion to make all those amendments, or, so we're in discussion, so we're already done, so.
Wait, I have one,
Okay,
I think. And item D, does get changed, where it says Mr. Beal made a motion effective September 24th, 25 to reconsider or rescind the vote made at the DEI June meeting.
you just changed that, didn't you, Kevin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you fully changed
I
that one?
concur.
Okay,
You did.
sorry, I missed that one, sorry.
Okay, so all those in favor of accepting the minutes as changed, say aye. Aye. Okay, and then ask for a motion to accept the minutes of October 3rd, that special meeting that took how many minutes? 3?
3 minutes.
Could get a motion for
So
that?
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then we saw the communication, so I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So
Move to
moved.
adjourn. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned, thank you.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education, and live broadcasts.
SEM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings, and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SEM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions, and it's no secret People have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SEM receives less revenue.
Even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
Continues to educate our youth.
And keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SEM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
For generations to come.
Visit our website
Or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
Counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media.
where your town
Your schools and
And your government
come together.